think back to a time when things on the surface seemed okay. You know, maybe you had the job, the right friends, all the things you were told would make you happy. But underneath, there was this sort of quiet hum of dissatisfaction, like something wasn't quite right.
Yeah, that feeling something's missing.
Exactly. Back in 2019, Marcus, a 28-year-old teacher, he was wrestling with exactly that, this disconnect between how things looked and how he actually felt. Does that sound familiar to you listening?
I think that feeling of disconnect is really common. And often it points to a kind of conflict, doesn't it? A conflict with these older ideas about what it means to be a man today.
Which is exactly what we're diving deep into today. Really looking at masculinity for the modern age, sort of redefining it. And this isn't about, throwing out everything. It's more about examining those restrictive stereotypes that can genuinely hold men back.
Precisely. Society often, it conditions men to push down emotions, right? To see vulnerability as weakness, to always keep up this front of being strong.
Like with Marcus. We saw how keeping things bottled up really impacted his relationship.
Yeah, it contributed to some significant challenges for him.
So our goal today really is to explore a more balanced view. And importantly, one that's backed by science, looking at how men can actually thrive in relationships, work, just overall well-being.
And we'll be digging into 5 key areas that sort of form this newer framework for masculinity.
Right. And this isn't just based on stories like Marcus's. Those are powerful. The data really shows there's a significant issue here.
The numbers are quite telling.
Yeah, consider this. A 2021 study, American Psychological Association, found 58% of men feel this societal pressure to just man up when they're struggling emotionally.
58%, that's a huge weight, that expectation.
It really is.
And tragically, this pressure, it can have really severe outcomes. CDC data from 2023 shows men make up about 80% of suicides in the U.S.
80%.
Yeah, and middle-aged men are at the highest risk. It's incredibly serious.
And another thing, a Pew Research study from 2022 found that 72% of men themselves feel that traditional ideas about masculinity actually limit their own ability to show empathy.
Wow. They recognize it themselves.
Yeah, that's a powerful self-assessment, isn't it?
It really is. So the core of what we're saying today is that, look, authentic masculinity isn't about this rigid act of bottling things up or needing to dominate.
Right.
It's more about finding a healthy balance. It's supported by what we're learning from science. And ultimately, it's about allowing men to flourish, in all parts of life, connections, work, mental health.
Okay, so let's get into it. Our first key area, then, is figuring out what true masculinity really means, beyond those old stereotypes. And to start, let's talk about James. He's a former Marine. Yeah.
Someone you might picture as embodying that traditional toughness.
Exactly.
And James's story is so compelling because it shows how even someone from that kind of background can redefine what strength means to them after going through combat trauma. He realized that the stoicism, the kind of rigidness he'd been taught, was actually getting in the way of his healing. It was only when he allowed himself to be vulnerable, to actually feel things, that he found a path to recovery. That became his new definition of inner strength.
It really makes you think about where these very specific ideas of masculinity came from. They weren't always like this, were they?
No, definitely not. If you look back historically or across different cultures, you see a much broader picture.
Like what?
Well, take some indigenous cultures, like the Maori, for example. Warriors were respected, yes, but also highly valued for collaboration, for wisdom, for being leaders and nurturers in their communities.
So it wasn't just about physical strength?
Not at all. It was much more holistic.
So what happened? How did we end up with this narrower, often more restrictive view we see so often today?
Well, a big piece of the puzzle seems to be the shift of industrialization. As societies got more focused on, competition, factory work, maximizing output, masculine ideals started getting tied more and more to suppressing emotions.
Okay.
And this constant drive to be the most competitive, to climb the ladder.
Right.
Expressing feelings could be seen as, inefficient. A liability almost.
That makes sense. In that kind of competitive environment, maybe emotions felt like a weakness.
Exactly. And that's where people like Dr. Michael Kimmel offer such useful ways to reframe it. He talks about healthy masculinity integrating strength and compassion.
Strength and compassion.
Yeah. He says the core should be responsibility,
Yeah.
being accountable for yourself, your actions, rather than try and control others or just shutting down your own feelings.
Responsibility, that's a really different emphasis than control, isn't it? It shifts focus inward.
It's about duty and care. And what's really fascinating is that our biology, it seems to support this broader view too.
Really? How so?
Well, research from the University of Zurich back in 2020, it pointed to testosterone, which we usually link with aggression, right?
Yeah.
It actually plays a role in nurturing behaviors as well. It's much more complex than the simple story we often tell.
Okay, so for someone listening, maybe they're starting to think, maybe my idea of masculinity has been a bit narrow. What are some concrete first steps?
I think the first crucial step is to actively question that ingrained definition of strength. Just pause and think about it.
Okay.
Instead of defaulting to aggression or, being emotionally detached, try consciously redefining it for yourself as accountability, taking ownership.
Ownership of actions, feelings, commitments, that's a big mental shift.
It is. And the second thing, which flows from that, is to start identifying those unhelpful cultural scripts. The things we all absorbed growing up.
Like boys don't cry.
Exactly, like boys don't cry. Recognize those for what they are. Just limiting beliefs, they don't capture the full reality of being human. And then try to consciously challenge those inner voices when they pop up.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to our second pillar, mental health and emotional resilience, which, given those stats we talked about earlier, feels incredibly vital.
Absolutely critical.
We have the story of David, a corporate lawyer, that kind of high-pressure job.
Oh, yeah. Huge pressure to always seem in control, always on top of things.
Right. And David found himself completely burnt out.
That's right. The constant need to keep up that persona, the successful, unflappable lawyer, it just took a massive toll, mentally, physically.
So what helped him?
It wasn't until he started exploring things like mindfulness and actually going to therapy that he began to find a way back, a more, sustainable way to live and work.
Again, there's solid data backing up why paying attention to emotional health is so important.
Definitely. There was research in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine, 2021, indicating that men who are more emotionally transparent, who actually express what they're feeling, have a 37% lower chance of developing heart disease.
Wow, 37%. That's a direct link between emotional health and physical health.
A really significant link, yeah. Well, we don't always connect.
True.
And thinking about help, the NIH, National Institutes of Health, reported in 2022 that cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, it can reduce anxiety in men by up to 52% in some studies. That's even compared to just using medication alone. It shows how effective therapy can be in tackling those underlying thought patterns.
So CBT helps you identify and change those negative thought loops.
Exactly.
So scientifically speaking, what's happening inside the brain when men feel they have to suppress emotions all the time?
It's quite revealing, actually. MRI scans show that in men who consistently suppress emotions, there's often more activity in the amygdala.
The fear center.
Right, the brain's kind of threat detection system. It's like the brain stays on high alert, constantly scanning for danger.
So that sounds exhausting.
It is incredibly draining over time. But conversely, research from Stanford Neuroscience in 2021 suggests something really interesting.
Okay.
Actively acknowledging and processing those vulnerable feelings actually seems to strengthen the prefrontal cortex.
Which is the part for reasoning, decision-making.
Exactly. And crucially, emotional regulation and resilience. So, engaging with your feelings, not suppressing them, can actually build mental toughness, real resilience.
Okay, so how can someone listening start building that emotional muscle, that resilience? What are some practical things?
Well, a really good starting point can be daily journaling. Doesn't have to be long.
Right.
Even just 5 or 10 minutes a day, jotting down thoughts, feelings. It boosts self-awareness. You could use prompts like, what emotions am I feeling right now? Or maybe what situations tend to trigger strong reactions in me?
Simple but effective. What about seeking professional help? That can still feel like a big hurdle for some guys.
It absolutely can. But it's so important to know there are many therapists out there who really get it, who understand the specific pressures men face.
So how do you find the right one?
Look for therapists who use evidence-based methods, like CBT, which we mentioned, or ACT acceptance and commitment therapy. Often, just finding a safe, non-judgmental space is the biggest step. Online directories can help, and don't be afraid to do a few initial chats to find someone you click with.
Good advice. Okay, let's pivot to our third key area, building deeper, more meaningful relationships. This feels like another place where traditional masculinity can sometimes get in the way.
Definitely.
We have the story of Miguel, a divorced dad.
Miguel's story really highlights how changing your communication can transform relationships. After his divorce, he realized he hadn't been truly, present with his daughter, not really listening. By consciously working on understanding her viewpoint, asking questions, showing empathy, he managed to rebuild that connection in a really profound way.
And it's not just about feeling closer, right? There's research on the tangible benefits of these skills.
Oh, absolutely. A 2020 study, Journal of Social Psychology, found that men who regularly express gratitude in their marriage.
Just saying thank you, showing appreciation.
Exactly. Those men reported 29% longer-lasting marriages.
Wow, such a simple thing with a big impact.
It really is. And you mentioned Dr. John Gottman's work earlier. His stuff on emotional bids is fascinating.
Right, explain this again.
So an emotional bid is basically any attempt one partner makes to connect with the other. It could be tanny, a question, a comment, pointing something out, even just a sigh.
Okay.
Gottman's research showed that consistently responding positively to these bids, just acknowledging them, turning towards your partner, can cut down relationship conflict by a massive 64%.
64%, just from those small moments of connection.
It's about those everyday acknowledgments, not just grand gestures.
Right. So practically speaking, what skills help here? You mentioned Gottman's 5.1 ratio.
Yeah, the 5.1 ratio, it's a guideline, really. It suggests that in healthy relationships, for every negative interaction during conflict, there are typically at least 5 positive interactions.
5 positives to balance out 1 negative.
Exactly. Keeping that ratio in mind can help navigate disagreements more constructively.
That's a really concrete thing to aim for. Any other tools for those tough conversations?
Frameworks like NVC, nonviolent communication, can be super helpful.
NVC.
Yeah. It gives you a structured way to express your own needs and feelings clearly, but also compassionately. And crucially, it teaches you to actively listen to the other person's perspective without jumping to blame or judgment. It helps you find understanding, even when things are tense.
Makes sense. Okay, 4th area, shifting focus to the workplace. What does true masculinity look like professionally? We've got the case of Alex, a tech CEO.
And the stereotypical image of a tech CEO is often, very assertive, maybe even dominant.
Definitely.
And that's kind of the style Alex started with, more top-down, maybe authoritarian. But he noticed it wasn't really working. It led to high turnover, less real innovation.
So what did he change?
He consciously shifted towards being more collaborative, more empathetic as a leader. And the result? A 40% increase in employee retention.
40%, that's huge. It really pushes back against that idea of the all-powerful boss being the most effective.
It really does. And the research backs it up. Harvard Business Review, 2023, highlighted that leaders who show humility.
Humility? Interesting.
Yeah, leaders who are humble actually see 26% higher team performance. Being open to learning, admitting you don't have all the answers, it turns out that's really effective.
And what about empathy?
Gallup research, also 2023, found teams with managers they see as empathetic have 55% lower turnover.
55% lower turnover. People clearly want to feel understood at work.
Who wouldn't? It makes a massive difference. So let's talk about that alpha male idea in the workplace.
Right.
Often that aggressive, dominant approach, it can really backfire in modern companies. It can shut down creativity, create resentment.
Lead people to leave.
Exactly.
Right.
Forbes wrote about this in 2022, how that style often stifles the very collaboration needed today.
So if not the aggressive alpha, what actually works? What attracts opportunities leads to success.
Well, a LinkedIn study looked at negotiation success. It found that genuine confidence, rooted in competence, self-awareness, is way more influential than just being aggressive.
So being secure, but also open.
Precisely. People are more likely to trust and follow someone who is confident, but also willing to listen and find common ground.
Okay, so for someone thinking about their career, what are the key strategies here?
I'd say a crucial one is consciously trying to balance assertiveness with humility.
Assertiveness and humility.
Yeah, being able to state your case, set boundaries, but also being genuinely open to feedback and recognizing other people's contributions. It's a dynamic balance.
That sounds like a skill to cultivate.
Definitely. And the other key strategy is using emotional intelligence, EQ, to handle conflicts.
Instead of just reacting.
Right. Instead of getting defensive or trying to win at all costs, focus on understanding the emotions and perspectives on all sides. That usually leads to much better, more lasting solutions.
Okay. That brings us to our 5th and final area, cultivating what we're calling the alpha male winner mindset. Now, I know that term alpha male can be loaded,
Definitely carries baggage.
but the way it's framed here seems different. We have Ryan's story. He faced some really big challenges.
Ryan's story is incredibly powerful. He overcame addiction, rebuilt his life, became a successful entrepreneur.
Right.
And his journey wasn't about being aggressive or dominating others. It was about finding inner strength, serious discipline, and a really clear sense of purpose.
And that connects to this winner framework. Can you break that down?
Sure. WINNER is an acronym: willpower, integrity, nurturance, energy, and responsibility. Let's just touch on the first three, W-I-N, as they tie in well.
Okay.
Willpower, think Angela Duckworth's work on grit, that persistence towards long-term goals. Integrity, that's about your actions matching your values, being authentic, trustworthy.
And nurturance. That sounds different from the typical alpha idea.
It is. Nurturance here means leading through mentorship, through support, helping others grow, not just telling them what to do, guiding developing potential.
That completely reframes alpha. It's less about being the loudest voice and more about inner strength and lifting others up.
Exactly. And, for you listening, we actually have a resource related to this. It's a free book called How to Be the Alpha Male. Become a winner, not a whiner.
Okay, that title.
I know. The title might raise eyebrows given the old stereotypes.
Yeah.
But honestly, the content is very much aligned with the balanced, modern view we've been discussing.
So it's not about the old toxic stuff.
Not at all. It's really a guide to building genuine confidence, focus, finding your purpose. It's not about manipulation or being aggressive. And it's been helpful. Over 10,000 men have used its ideas. It offers a practical path to developing that inner fortitude.
Good to clarify. So what are some simple daily habits people can use to build this winner mindset?
Small things add up. Simple morning routines can make a big difference. Maybe a few minutes of quiet reflection, journaling, or just setting a clear intention for your day. It sets the tone.
Mental clarity.
Yeah. And another one is the 5-minute rule for tackling procrastination.
How does that work?
If there's a task you're avoiding, just commit to doing it for 5 minutes. Only 5. Often, just starting is the hardest part, and those 5 minutes build enough momentum to keep going.
Breaks through that initial resistance. Clever.
It really works.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, it feels like the core message is that true masculinity isn't about ditching strength. It's about redefining it for today's world.
Precisely. It's about finding the courage to be vulnerable when needed, to really invest in deep connections, and to lead with integrity and, yes, empathy.
Those seem like the foundations for a genuinely fulfilling life.
They really are. These aren't weaknesses, they're profound strengths.
And for you listening right now, this isn't just theory. This is about unlocking your own potential for a life that feels more authentic, more meaningful, richer.
Absolutely. So we really encourage you to take that next step. You can download the free book we mentioned, How to Be the Alpha Male. Join a community of men who are focused on growth, on figuring out what it means to be a man today.
It's an ongoing journey.
It is.
So as you go about your day, maybe just mull this over. Are you going to keep letting outdated stereotypes hold you back, leaving you feeling maybe a bit hollow? Or are you ready to embrace the challenge and the rewards of stepping into the full potential of the man you truly can be?